What's up, y'all? My name is Rochelle. I'm representing For the Culture Travel Collective. Welcome to the channel. If this is your first time, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join the family. Also, like, comment, and share to boost the engagement, okay? So today's topic is going to be several things that I've noticed after traveling to 11 African countries. All right, so I just spent the last 3 months backpacking through Africa. I traveled from Cape Town to Cairo. If you want to see my full raw adventure, go to my TikTok. I documented the entire experience on my TikTok, and I'm just getting back into YouTube. I'm going to be honest, but the information is shortly coming to YouTube too. So I'm going to be making YouTube videos about my experience as well. But I wanted to start with this because this experience was genuinely life-changing. The first thing that I've learned, okay, after traveling in Africa, literally from south to north, is that there are a lot of Africans that don't consider themselves Africans. And this was, I'm not going to say it was a shock because I had heard about it here and there, but actually having people that were born on the continent of Africa tell me to my face, yeah, I don't really identify as African. That was a shock to me when people look you in your face and say that to you. I didn't experience it in Southern Africa or Eastern Africa, really. I didn't experience it until I got to Ethiopia and also Egypt. I had a lot of Ethiopians tell me like, yes, we identify as Ethiopian first. And I think for Ethiopia, it's because they were never colonized and they were able to keep their independence. I guess that's their logic and their train of thought. But a lot of Ethiopians told me that they don't identify as African. They identify as Ethiopian first. And from what they told me, it's just because they're very proud to be Ethiopian and they will always consider themselves Ethiopian above all, above anything. But also something that I found very interesting is that a lot of them claim Israel and have ties to Israel, and a lot of Ethiopians actually moved to Israel. So while in Ethiopia, I had the chance of meeting a lot of Ethiopians. They're genuinely kind people, and they shared a little bit about their perspectives and their history. And one of the things that I heard that was very common was that they didn't identify as African. They were Ethiopian first. And even in Egypt and like Morocco, like a lot of the Northern African countries, they consider themselves Arab before anything else. So I've even encountered Ethiopians that, denied their African heritage. But some Ethiopians were very proud of their African heritage. I literally had some Egyptians come up to me saying like, oh, I'm African like you. And it's like, yeah. So a lot of them were super excited and proud to tell me that they were African, but some of them, just didn't identify with the label. There's also the Nubian Egyptians, which I didn't have a chance to really sit down and have a long conversation with Nubian Egyptians. But from what I understand, they identify as Kushites, first, which is just a whole different separate history, but they identify as Nubian and Kushites. But I do believe that the Nubian Egyptians have a stronger relationship to their African heritage. So this is just something that I observed in my short time in these countries, talking to the locals and just sharing perspectives and ideas with the locals. Another thing that I've noticed traveling in Africa is that permanent tattoos, are not very common. And they're not very normalized. Like, I don't have a lot of tattoos. I have about maybe 5 arm tattoos. And even when I would show the tattoos on my arm, some people were just very fascinated. Some people were maybe fearful or just like, I guess, attracted to my tattoos because in their culture, wherever I was in Africa, it wasn't very common to see like a woman with a lot of tattoos, maybe. Maybe it was because I was a woman. I'm not sure, but like the type of tattoos that I have, that are not tribal tattoos are not very common in the countries that I went to on the continent. Another thing that I've learned traveling in Africa is that chivalry is not dead. I would also like to tie in community is not dead. Community is very alive and well in Africa, and I saw it show up in many different facets on an everyday basis. The men are genuinely chivalrous. This is the most taken care of that I've felt traveling on any other continent. Like in Africa, I felt like just naturally taken care of. And that's something that I can say that I haven't experienced in a lot of countries that I've traveled to. I've been traveling for 11 years. I've been to over 30 countries, but I never felt like naturally taken care of like I did in Africa, especially by the men. So I'm grateful for that. You know, some of them did ask for my number or maybe had their own plan or their own whatever. I don't know, but they didn't do anything to me. I didn't do anything to them, but they were chivalrous, you know, which is something that I really appreciate. So chivalry is still alive on the continent. So I'm a little impressed. My faith in men has been restored just a tiny bit. All right. So let's get into the next one. All right. So the next thing that I learned traveling in Africa is the internet is a privilege in a lot of areas. And I say this because I, as a content creator, a travel content creator, there were times where I literally couldn't do my job because I just didn't have internet. And it really opened my eyes to the fact that like internet is a privilege. It's not a need. It's not, you're not entitled to it. When you get internet, and you're just grateful because you finally have it. So obviously it depends on the location. But again, I was backpacking. Sometimes I was in the countryside. Sometimes I was in more remote areas. Sometimes I was in very big cities, but internet was not always accessible. And it did open my eyes to the fact that internet is a privilege. Things like as a long-term traveler, things like hot water and even air conditioning are things that I've learned to live without. But traveling in Africa for 3 months with limited internet, sometimes no internet, sometimes not even calling or messaging, it did really make me grateful just to have consistent internet, consistent electricity. And it made me realize that these things are privileges to a lot of people around the world. So it was a little bit of an adjustment that I had to make, even though I felt like I was pretty adjusted to going without a lot of amenities as a full-time traveler. The next thing that I learned traveling to 11 African countries is that Americans don't have passport privilege in Africa. And obviously this is a very privileged take. I'm not complaining in any way, shape, or form. I do understand the privilege that comes with having an American passport in general, but I have noticed that Africa is the continent where I've had the least American passport privilege. Even I haven't been to West Africa yet, but I'm planning a West Africa tour. And even planning my tour in West Africa, some countries require you to pay $100, $200 or more dollars just for a tourist visa, which I have never encountered in my entire life. I've never paid $100, $200, $300 for a tourist visa with my American passport. And this did open my eyes again to a realm that I didn't even, consider. Americans do not have a lot of passport privilege in the continent of Africa. I would say maybe West African passports are the strongest, or even the South African passport is the strongest. But again, I'm not complaining in any way, shape, or form. It's just something that I've noticed. For example, when I was in Ethiopia, I was stuck at the border, the Kenya-Ethiopia border, for over 8 hours because I had an American passport and I wasn't able to freely pass through like a lot of East Africans. I had to wait at the border for 8 hours. I had to pay $82 for a visa, which is one of the most expensive visas, tourist visas that I've ever bought. Okay. And it just opened my eyes. Like even in Tanzania, I had to pay $100 for the Tanzanian visa, tourist visa. Again, I've paid money for residency visas and, stuff like that, but I've never paid $180, $200 for a tourist visa. So it did open my eyes that Americans do not have passport privilege in the continent of Africa. The visas can be very, very expensive just for a very simple tourist visa. So that is one thing to keep in mind. Another thing that I was able to appreciate and learn while traveling to 11 African countries is that reconnecting with my roots has been effortless. It's been an amazing experience. It's been just a lot more effortless than I could have ever imagined. My friend asked me how it felt to be in Africa for the first time in my life. And I told her that it felt like I was riding a bike for the first time in like 10 years. You know, like you learn how to ride a bike when you're a kid, but a lot of people forget and they never ride a bike again. But imagine 10 years later picking up that bike and you get on and it's a little shaky at first, but every, stride, it gets easier and easier and easier. That's how I would describe my experience in Africa. Every step was easier. Every country became more fluid and smoother and easier because I was accustomed, like maybe genetically, to African culture, customs, and ways. I also do think that living in Latin America helped prepare me for Africa in a lot of ways, which I may make a completely different video about that. But yeah, reconnecting with my African culture has been smooth and seamless and effortless in a lot of ways. Even I went to an African cooking class in Cape Town. It was a South African cooking class, and I was cooking pop, which is basically like this cornmeal basically like a cornmeal, kind of like grits. And when I was cooking it, they were like, wow, are you sure you haven't cooked this before? Are you sure how do you know how to cook this? And I'm just like, it's in my DNA. Come on. I'm a descendant of Africa. It's just effortless for me to cook some of the traditional African foods because I really do feel like it's just in my DNA. And that's what I mean when I say some parts of reconnecting with Africa were very effortless. And I love that. Now, with that being said, I did notice that some Africans do have a bias about African Americans, and it was easy to tell that some Africans have a bias about African Americans. Some of them think that we're stupid. Some of them are just straight up, with all due respect, some Africans are envious and jealous of Black Americans. And this is from my personal experience. I have felt that energy interacting with very few Africans on the continent. It's easy to tell that some Africans are envious or jealous or sometimes maybe even hateful because, I don't know, maybe just different cultural backgrounds. But yeah, that is just the truth. That is my personal experience. Some Africans have a bias about Black Americans. Some Africans are jealous, envious. They just don't like us. Not everybody is going to like you, but that is one thing that I definitely noticed from my personal experience. But that doesn't outweigh the dozens and hundreds of beautiful, kind, welcoming, hospitable Africans that I've met during my travel as well. So it happens, but it doesn't outweigh the amazing people that you will meet as well. So I still highly recommend you come. Okay, so this one might be a little bit controversial, but as a happily single woman with no kids and really no serious responsibilities in life, some people just don't understand your journey. Some people just don't understand why I don't want to have kids, why I'm not married yet, why I don't have 3 or 4 or 5 babies yet. Some people really don't understand, I guess, my journey or my lifestyle. I do understand my lifestyle is unconventional in a lot of ways. But yeah, when I was traveling in Africa, the 3 months I was traveling, I received so many questions about why I'm not married yet, why I don't have kids yet, why am I traveling alone? How am I doing it? Where am I getting my money? People were genuinely confused that a Black woman just wants to leisurely travel in Africa to connect with African cultures. And people were even more confused when I told them I wasn't thinking about kids. I wasn't thinking about marriage. And it's almost like they hate to see it. A lot of people do believe that African women are for making babies. If you're not going to get married and make babies, what are you doing with your life? And that is the mentality that I have encountered traveling in Africa. And, it's interesting, but I respect their beliefs and I still stand by my beliefs. But in my opinion, it is a little sad when people think that Black women are just from popping out babies, because Black women are so much more than that. Motherhood is very important, but also reconnecting with yourself and deciding to live your own life how you want to live it is also very important. So yeah, that is one thing that I've noticed. People expect you to just sit down, get married, and have some babies and cook for your husband. And when you're not living your life like that, some people in Africa are genuinely confused. And it's funny. Let's just put it like that. It's funny. Also, even when I was traveling in Africa, like I had people literally telling me, oh, you need to get a Zulu husband. You need a Zimbabwean husband. You need a Malawi husband. Like and I'm going to be honest, it got to the point to where it just got exhausting. Like when you're just a single woman trying to live your life and just thrive and do what you enjoy, it gets exhausting when every country you go to, random people feel like they have the right to tell you that you need to get married, you need to get a boyfriend, you need to get a husband, you need to have no, I don't. And then some people have even said like, oh, when you're older, you're going to regret not having kids. You're going to regret it. You're going to regret it. And this is what I tell them. I say, hey, you could do everything right. You could get married in your 30s. You could have kids. You could, raise the kids, do everything you're supposed to do. And then you could still be divorced by the time you're 60 and your kids don't talk to you. Your ex-husband doesn't talk to you. And then what? That's why I think it's important to just establish life on your own basis instead of just having kids just because society tells you to. I know 60-year-olds, 50-year-olds that are divorced. Their kids don't talk to them. They're miserable because they're just not a good person. That's just the truth. If you're not a good person, you're going to end up alone and miserable at any stage in life. Having kids and getting married is not going to protect you from ending up alone with nobody, around you. So moving on, that's one thing that I noticed pretty much every single African country that I've been to. People are obsessed with marriage and kids. I guess that's why they call it the motherland. Another thing that I noticed traveling to 11 African countries is that traveling in Africa doesn't have to be expensive. I know that it can be very expensive, especially when you start catching flights and you want to travel very comfortably. But if you're willing to make a lot of sacrifices, you can travel through Africa at a very, reasonable budget, especially if you're willing to take buses, taxis, ferries, trains. Those forms of public transportation are very affordable in the continent. So I would highly recommend trying those ways if you do plan on coming to Africa, because that is a way that you're going to see as much as you possibly can see on a budget. So traveling in Africa doesn't have to be expensive if you're willing to make some sacrifices. Another thing that I've noticed traveling in 11 countries in Africa is that fatphobia is normalized in some places. And for me, I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. I don't know if it's that fatphobia is very normalized or if just making comments about people's body is more normalized. But either way, I had people that were just too comfortable. I would say actually it is fatphobia because I had people that were too comfortable just making comments about my body when I didn't ask them. I didn't care. What is the point of you commenting on my body? There was one time I was in a bus and I picked a bus seat and the man was just like, oh, I don't think that bus seat is good for you. Your arms are too big. You're going to be too, I guess he was trying to say, I'm going to be uncomfortable. He's like, your arms are too big. Your arms are big. I was like, my arms are big. What do you mean? He's like, yeah, your arms are big. I would choose a different seat. You have to choose a different seat. I'm just like, a bus seat is a bus seat. Well, what do you mean my arms are too big? I can't choose this bus seat. And there was even another time I was trying on a dress in Kenya. And, I tried on the dress. It was looking nice. And the staff member was just like, oh, you're not big. You're not big. I'm just like, okay. And then there was another time where there was this guy that was interested in me and he told me, he was like, you have an old body, which he was basically saying that I needed to lose weight because the weight that I had, I guess the way my body looked like a woman that had kids. Now, again, who the fuck asked, excuse my French, but who asked you? There were several times where people just felt too comfortable. Oh, there was another time in Kenya. Now that I remember this one, there was another time in Kenya where I was waiting for a staff member at another shop that I was buying a dress at. And she was speaking to her staff member on the phone. There was a woman that I had met prior. And then she got off the phone. She was like, oh, yeah, she says that she remembers you. She was describing you as like tall and a little fat. And I'm just like, why was she describing me as a little fat? Like, was that necessary? Like, so, and I love my body. Like, I'm working on getting healthier, and I think weight loss will come with that, but I'm not severely obese. And even if I was, I don't think that it would be okay to like make all those comments on somebody's body. So yeah, people are very comfortable making comments on your body, and a lot of those comments are fat phobic. So that is one thing that kind of took me by surprise, because I thought that Africa would be the one place where like bigger bodies would be celebrated and embraced and, I guess loved, but people feel very comfortable making rude comments about your body. And that's one thing that kind of shocked me. That's one thing that I learned traveling in 11 countries in Africa. Okay. But contrary to that, even though some people did make rude comments about my body, I still felt like I was the beauty standard. It was an amazing feeling like I was the beauty standard, and men were attracted to me because, for genuine reasons. I did get fetishized as maybe an American, maybe as a foreigner, but I didn't get fetishized just as a Black woman. So I do feel like people genuinely are attracted to Black women. And I felt like I was the beauty standard as a Black woman. And it was an amazing feeling just to see women that looked like me, see beautiful women, even tall women that looked like me, and just to feel like I just fit in, and to have people being attracted to me because I just looked like them and they looked like me. And it just felt very natural and organic compared to when I was living in Europe. If a white person was attracted to me, I had to be a little cautious of their intentions, and I had to be a little cautious making sure that they weren't fetishizing me or sexualizing me as a Black woman, so even though there was a little bit of fat phobia, I still felt extremely desired and attractive and beautiful. I felt like I was the beauty standard in Africa. So that's one thing that I loved and appreciated. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Comment below so we can start a dialogue, a respectful dialogue. Let me know if you agree, disagree, if you want to add to the dialogue. And I will see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Peace out.